This is a story about the most dangerous man in Asia. He survived poison in his espresso. He survived an exploding kimchi refrigerator. He survived a hitman disguised as a Pilates instructor. 10 assassination attempts. 10 times. He walked away from every single one without blinking. Neurologists confirmed it. His amygdala, the part of your brain that processes fear, was essentially decorative. This man did not feel fear. And then he walked into a diner in Atlanta, Georgia, and a 5'3" waitress named Destiny Smith looked up from her order pad and said, "Hey boo, what can I get you?" And Lee Jun, crime lord, feared by governments, survivor of 10 assassinations, forgot his own name. This is how it happened. Before we go any further, I need you to do something for me right now. If you have ever been completely undone by someone who wasn't even trying, someone who just smiled at you or remembered something small about you and your entire brain just left the building, I need you to type, "IT wasn't even a big thing" in the comments right now. Because Lee Jun is about to go through something very specific and very embarrassing, and I need to know I'm not alone in understanding it. Also, and this is important, this story took a long time to put together, and if it moves you even a little, hit that like button right now before we go any further. You're basically telling the universe that stories about dangerous men being defeated by basic human warmth deserve to exist, which they do. Subscribe if you're new. I'll be here every week making you feel things you weren't prepared for. Okay, now, let's talk about Lee Jun. Lee Jun was 27 years old and had never once been afraid of anything. Not the dark, not death, not the 12 men who had, at various points across 9 years, been paid considerable sums of money to end his life. The neurologist who examined him at 22 had looked at his brain scans for a long time, then looked at Lee Jun, then looked back at the scans, and said, very carefully, "Your amygdala functions at a level we typically associate with." And Lee Jun had said, "I know," and stood up and left, because he had a meeting in 40 minutes and the neurologist was not telling him anything he hadn't already understood about himself since he was 19. His empire stretched across Seoul, Busan, and 3 food courts in New Jersey that nobody asked questions about. He controlled illegal gambling rings that spanned 4 countries, underground networks that moved things governments preferred not to acknowledge, and, in a development that had confused his rivals for 6 years, the most successful legitimate chain of bubble tea shops in East Asia. 31 locations. Consistent branding. Excellent reviews. Nobody brought it up in negotiations because nobody could figure out how to use it against him, and the uncertainty made them uncomfortable. He had never said please in a professional context. He had never said sorry. He had once caused a senior government diplomat to cry simply by exhaling in a particular way during a particularly tense moment in a particular meeting. And the story had spread through 3 countries in 48 hours, and Lee Jun had heard it retold twice in rooms he was sitting in and had not corrected anyone's details because the details were accurate. Then there were the 10 assassination attempts. The first was a poisoned espresso, amateur work, dealt with quickly. The second involved a car. The third, and this is the one that people brought up most often, involved a chandelier, a mistimed explosion, and an interior designer who had been placed in Lee Jun's building 6 months in advance. Lee Jun still had the scar on his left eyebrow. He touched it occasionally when he was thinking. He did not think of it as a scar. He thought of it as a reminder that people were creative when motivated. The 4th attempt involved a Pilates instructor. Lee Jun refused to discuss the 4th attempt in any detail whatsoever, and the specific firmness with which he refused made people deeply curious and deeply aware that they should not push it. By the 10th attempt, the car bomb, Seoul, a Tuesday, Lee Jun had walked away adjusting his tie before the smoke cleared. His second in command, a 6 feet 4 inches former Special Forces soldier named Kwon, had watched him do it from 15 feet away and had felt, for the first time in 4 years of working for Lee Jun, something approaching actual awe. Not at the survival, at the tie, at the absolute refusal to let the moment cost him anything visible. Kwon had worked for Lee Jun for 4 years. In that time, he had defused 17 professional crises, coordinated 2 international negotiations, and managed the kind of logistical complexity that would have dismantled lesser organizations entirely. He was the most competent man Lee Jun had ever employed. He was also, privately, deeply fond of his boss in the way that people become fond of complicated things they have spent a long time trying to understand. He ate muffins when stressed. He had been eating a lot of muffins lately. Because 3 weeks ago, Lee Jun had flown to Atlanta for a business meeting, and something had gone wrong in a way that Kwon's entire professional training had left him completely unprepared for. The Atlanta trip was supposed to be clean. There were 3 rival factions operating in the city whose consolidation under Lee Jun's network would secure a critical trade route and close a vulnerability that had been bothering Lee Jun for 8 months. 2 weeks. In and out. Lee Jun was efficient above all things. He had never in 9 years allowed a business matter to take longer than it needed to. He arrived on a Monday. The meeting was Tuesday morning. He needed somewhere to wait on Monday evening. Somewhere without the specific atmosphere of his hotel suite that made him feel like a painting in a gallery, looked at but not inhabited. He walked 3 blocks from his hotel without telling Quan where he was going, which was the kind of thing that gave Quan a particular expression he saved for situations where concern was appropriate, but expressing it was inadvisable. The diner was unremarkable. That was the point. Laminated menus. A condiment station that had seen better decades. A coffee machine behind the counter that made a low groaning sound approximately every 4 minutes like an elderly man being asked to stand up. Booths with slightly sticky tables in the specific way that means they have been cleaned many times, but the cleaning never quite reaches whatever history lives in the laminate. It smelled like eggs and dish soap, and something baking somewhere in the back that Lee Jun could not identify, but that landed in his chest with a warmth he didn't have a category for. He sat in the booth by the window, because the window gave him sight lines to the door and the street simultaneously, and cataloged the room in the way he always cataloged rooms. Exits, potential threats, structural features, personnel. The assessment took 11 seconds. Professional. Thorough. Then he picked up the menu and read it without seeing it, because his mind was already in Tuesday's meeting, running scenarios, calculating leverage points, preparing for the specific chess game of making 3 men believe they had no better option than the one he was offering them. He was in the middle of a particularly useful projection about the second faction's debt exposure when someone appeared at his table. "Hey Boo, what can I get you?" Lee Jun looked up. Destiny Smith was 5'3" and standing like someone who had been on her feet for 6 hours, and had 2 more to go and had made peace with it without being happy about it. Her natural hair was pulled up in a messy puff that was escaping its own structure in 3 places. She had a pen behind her ear that she clearly had no intention of using. She had an order pad in her hand. She had the expression of someone mildly annoyed at an espresso machine on a cosmic level, but professionally functional regardless. She was not performing. She was not trying to impress him. She was not afraid of him, which was not unusual. Most people who didn't know who he was weren't afraid of him until they were. But it was the specific quality of her non-performance that landed differently. She was not being strategically warm. She was not deploying charm. She was just a person asking another person a question, and she was waiting for the answer, and she had probably asked it 400 times today, and it meant nothing to her, and it landed in Lee Jun's chest like something had been unlocked with a key he didn't know he was missing. His operating system crashed. "I'll have," he started, and looked at the menu, and the menu had words on it that he understood individually, but could not currently assemble into a meaningful preference, because some part of his brain was still processing the fact that she had called him Boo and asked what he wanted and waited and had no angle and meant it and was still waiting and, "The pancake special," he said. "He does not eat pancakes. He has never eaten pancakes. He ate the pancakes." Quan found him 40 minutes later still in the booth, the empty pancake plate pushed to one side, a coffee cup in front of him that had been refilled twice without him asking. He was staring at the table with the expression of a man doing extremely complicated mathematics about something that was not mathematics. Quan slid into the seat across from him, looked at the empty plate, looked at Lee Jun. "You ate pancakes," Quan said. "Yes," Lee Jun said. "You don't eat pancakes." "I'm aware." Quan looked around the diner slowly, cataloging it the way he cataloged everything, and then his eyes found Destiny Smith behind the counter, refilling a sugar dispenser with the focused energy of someone completing a task so routine it had become meditative, and something in Quan's chest did a slow, terrible drop, the kind that happens when you see a thing coming from very far away and understand that there is absolutely nothing you can do to stop it. "Lee Jun," Quan said carefully. "We should go," Lee Jun said. "The meeting is at 9. "Right," Quan said. They left. Lee Jun tipped $30 on a $14 bill, which was generous but not insane, and walked out without looking back. Quan looked back. Destiny Smith was not watching them leave. She was arguing with the espresso machine in a low voice that suggested this was an ongoing relationship with a difficult history. She had not watched Lee Jun leave. She had not watched him at all, particularly, beyond the functional watching required by her job. Kwon got into the car and sat with this information for a while. They came back the next morning. Lee Jun said it was because the meeting had run long and he needed somewhere to debrief mentally before returning to the hotel. Kwon, who had been present for the meeting, which had run 20 minutes and gone exactly as projected, said nothing. He ordered a muffin. He ate it slowly and watched his boss sit in the same window booth and hold a menu he had already memorized and wait with a quality of waiting that Kwon had never seen in him before. Lee Jun was a man who was never simply waiting. He was always doing 12 other things inside the waiting. Today he was just waiting. Still. Present. Slightly ridiculous. Destiny came to the table with the same energy as the day before. Functional. Warm without effort. Pin behind the ear. Order pad ready. Back again, she said, not as a question, just as an observation, the way you'd note the weather. What can I get you? Coffee, Lee Jun said. Black. You got it, boo. She walked away. Lee Jun watched her go, then looked at his hands on the table like he was checking they were still his. Kwon, he said quietly. Yes, Kwon said. When she says boo, it's what she calls everyone. Kwon said, already knowing where this was going. I watched her call the man in the corner booth boo. He's 63 and was eating oatmeal. Lee Jun absorbed this. Something complicated moved across his face. Right, he said. Yes, Kwon said. He ordered a second muffin. He felt it was going to be one of those weeks that lasted a month. He was right. By the fourth morning, he was stress eating before 8 a.m., and by the sixth morning, he was on his second muffin before the coffee had finished brewing, and by the end of the second week, he had eaten more baked goods than in the previous calendar year combined, and was beginning to think seriously about what a lateral career move might look like. The tip incident happened on day 5. Lee Jun, operating on the specific frequency of a man who understands power and resources and leverage, but has never had to navigate the territory of simply wanting to do something kind for someone without an agenda behind it, left $500 on a $12.50 breakfast bill. He folded it neatly under the edge of the coffee cup. He stood up. He put on his jacket. He was almost to the door. Sir. He stopped. Destiny Smith was standing behind him holding the $500 with the expression of a woman who has seen many things in her years of waitressing, and this was a new category entirely. I can't take this, she said. Lee Jun turned around. Why? It wasn't aggressive. It was genuine. In his world, money moved problems. Money expressed things that were difficult to say directly. Money was, in many contexts, the clearest language available. He had offered it in that spirit, and her refusal had introduced a variable he didn't have a framework for. Because it's weird, Destiny said. Normal people tip 15%. Not, she looked at the bills, for 1,000%. It's $500, Lee Jun said. That's worse, Destiny said, and her voice went up slightly on the last word in a way that made the cook peer through the kitchen window. It's a tip, Lee Jun said, with the patience of a man explaining something simple. It's a message, Destiny said, with the patience of a woman explaining something he was clearly missing. And I don't know what the message is, and I don't have the bandwidth right now to figure it out, so, she held it out. Take it back, please. Lee Jun looked at the money. Looked at her. He took a breath that was almost, something like discomfort. Not fear. He was constitutionally incapable of fear, but something adjacent to it. Something that lived in the same neighborhood. He took the money. She nodded. Said, get home safe. Boo. With the exact same warmth, she said everything, turned around, and went back to work. Lee Jun stood at the door for a moment. Then he walked to the car. Sat down. Did not move for 11 seconds. Kwon, who was counting, waited. She touched my jacket, Lee Jun said. When she gave it back, she put it in my jacket pocket. I know, Kwon said. She just did it. Without asking. I know, Kwon said. Like it was nothing. I know, Kwon said. Kwon. Yes. I'm going to need a minute. I know, Kwon said, and looked out the window at nothing in particular, and felt the specific weight of a man who can see the future very clearly and has no power to alter it settling into his bones like weather. The PDF arrived on day 9. What had happened was this. Lee Jun, finding himself unable to sleep at 2 in the morning for reasons he was not examining directly, had started thinking about the diner's menu, specifically its margins, specifically the lunch service, which he had observed across several visits to be underperforming relative to the breakfast numbers in a way that was fixable with relatively minor structural adjustments. He had the data because he had been paying attention for 9 days with the same observational intensity he applied to everything, And what the data showed was inefficiency, and inefficiency bothered him professionally regardless of context. He told himself it was a professional observation. He told himself he would have done the same for any struggling small business he happened to notice. He told himself this with decreasing conviction over the course of 3 hours until at 5 in the morning he had a completed PDF with footnotes, a revised pricing model, 3 new dish suggestions, and a projected revenue increase of 34% for Tuesday lunch service specifically. He brought it to the diner on a Tuesday. He slid it across the counter while Destiny was on her break. She looked at it. She looked at him. "Did you make a PowerPoint about my job?" she said. "It's a PDF," Lee Jun said. "Did you?" She stopped. Picked it up. Opened it. Saw the footnotes. "There are footnotes," she said, with the voice of a woman discovering a new species of something she wasn't sure she wanted to know existed. "For the pricing projections," Lee Jun said. "The methodology is in the appendix." "There's an appendix?" "It's brief." Lee Jun. She set it down. Looked at him very directly. "Did you sleep?" "Some," he said. "You didn't sleep," she said. "You stayed up making a PDF about my Diners Club sandwich." There was a pause in which Lee Jun, who had negotiated with 3 governments and 2 cartels and one particularly difficult shipping magnate who cried during disagreements, found himself with nothing strategic to say. "The coleslaw pairing is inefficient," he said. "Go home, Lee Jun," Destiny said, with the energy of a woman who is laughing and refusing to show it simultaneously, pointing toward the door. He went. The manager implemented 2 of his suggestions the following Thursday. Lee Jun found out, and walked into Friday's breakfast with the quiet, contained satisfaction of a man who has won a war nobody else knew was being fought. He sat in his booth. He ordered his coffee. He radiated victory at a frequency that was almost visible. Destiny refilled his coffee without looking at him. "Don't," she said. "I didn't say anything," he said. "You're doing the face." "I don't have a face." "You have a face," she said, and walked away, and he watched her go. And somewhere underneath the satisfaction about the coleslaw was something warmer and less categorizable, something that had been growing for 9 days like a plant he hadn't meant to water, and he sat with his coffee and the morning light coming through the window and felt, for reasons he could not yet name, completely and terrifyingly alive. The bodyguard problem happened on a Wednesday morning, and it started, like most of the problems between them, with Lee Jun doing something that made complete sense inside his own logic and absolutely no sense inside anyone else's. Destiny arrived for her 7 o'clock shift to find 3 men in dark suits stationed outside the diner with the stillness of people trained to be invisible who were, in this context, extraordinarily visible. One was by the door. One was near the corner. One was doing something with his phone that was clearly not actually looking at his phone. They were not threatening anyone. They were not doing anything technically wrong. They were simply there, in the specific way that suggested someone important was either inside or nearby, and that the someone important had resources and a particular relationship with personal security. Destiny stood on the sidewalk for a moment looking at them. Then she walked inside. Lee Jun was at his usual table, coffee already in front of him. Looking at nothing in the specific way he looked at nothing when he was actually thinking about 6 things simultaneously. She walked directly to his table, put both hands flat on it, leaned forward slightly. "Explain," she said. Lee Jun looked up with the expression of a man who had prepared for many contingencies and not this one. "There was a credible threat in the area," he said. "It's precautionary." "A threat to what?" Destiny said. "The pancakes." "To the general vicinity," Lee Jun said. Lee Jun. "Yes. Are those men out there because of me?" The pause that followed was long enough to be its own answer. Lee Jun, who was many things, was not a liar with people he respected, and the pause did the work that words would have done less efficiently. "The pancakes are also very good," he said. "Remove your men from outside my job," Destiny said, not loudly, but with the specific force of someone who has a very clear bottom line and has just watched it be crossed. There is no credible threat to this diner, Lee Jun. There is an espresso machine that's been threatening to die for 6 months, and there's my manager who is going to come in at 8 and see 3 men in suits outside his restaurant and think I am involved in something, which apparently I am. You're not involved in anything, Lee Jun said, with complete seriousness. They're here for your protection. That's the opposite of involvement. Destiny stared at him. That is the most. She stopped. Took a breath. Call them off. I'll have them move. Off, Lee Jun. Not move. Off. He called them off. They moved half a block down the street where they were still completely visible to anyone paying attention, which Destiny discovered at lunch when she stepped outside and saw them down the block with the energy of people trying to look casual in the specific way that only people who are never casual attempt. The argument resumed from the beginning. Same points, same positions, marginally higher volume. Chloe watched the whole thing from the kitchen window eating French fries with the expression of someone watching a very entertaining documentary. Girl, Chloe said when Destiny came back inside. That man is gone for you. Don't, Destiny said. Like embarrassingly, completely, has lost his whole mind gone. Chloe, I'm working. He put security outside your job, Destiny. Do you know what my last boyfriend did? He forgot my birthday and then spelled my name wrong in the apology text. Chloe, for letters. He got 2 of them wrong. That's not. I'm just saying there's a spectrum, Chloe said, and ate another fry, and Destiny walked back out onto the floor and absolutely did not think about Lee Jun's face when she told him to remove the men. The way he'd looked not defensive but genuinely confused, like a person who had learned care in a language where protection and presence were synonyms and was only now discovering that other languages existed. She didn't think about it at all. She thought about it for the rest of the shift. It was around this time that Quan and Destiny developed their friendship, which was one of those connections that forms in the gap between two people who are both dealing with the same complicated situation from different angles and find an unexpected relief in acknowledging it out loud to each other. It started practically. Destiny had started bringing Quan recommended specials because he always looked slightly lost in front of the menu. And Quan had started arriving slightly before Lee Jun because the 5 minutes of quiet before the day's particular emotional weather system walked in were valuable to him. On a Thursday, 11 days into what was supposed to be a 2-week trip that was now entering its 3rd week, Quan sat at his corner booth with a grilled cheese Destiny had made him specifically because he'd looked tired, and he said, not looking up from the plate, he's different here. Destiny topped up his coffee and waited. In Seoul he's, Quan paused, searching for the word with the care of someone who is loyal and choosing honesty anyway. You know what he is in Seoul. You've Googled him by now. I haven't Googled him, Destiny said. Quan looked up. I haven't, she said, which was true, because she'd been specifically not Googling him in the way that you specifically don't do something when doing it would make a thing more real than you're ready for. Quan looked at her for a moment with an expression she couldn't fully read. Then he looked back at his plate. In Seoul, everything is calculated, he said. Every word, every movement. He walks into a room and the room changes. People finish their sentences faster. Deals close earlier. He picked up the sandwich. Here he argues about coleslaw. Destiny said nothing. I haven't seen him argue about something small in a long time, Quan said. Small things require, he stopped. Put the sandwich down. Looked at the table. Small things require caring about them. You can't argue about coleslaw if you don't actually care about the coleslaw. You can't, he stopped again. He cares about things here. Small things. I forgot he could do that. The diner was quiet around them. Someone's coffee cup clinked against a saucer 2 tables over. The kitchen made its usual sounds. How long has he been? Destiny started. Since he was 19, Quan said simply. Something happened. He built the whole thing after. The organization. The reputation. All of it. He picked up his coffee. I don't know the details. I don't ask. But I know what a person looks like when they've been carrying something for a long time. He looked at her directly. And I know what they look like when they put it down. Destiny held his gaze for a moment. Then she refilled his coffee even though it didn't need it, because she needed something to do with her hands. He's going to have to go back, she said. Yes, Quan said. His business here has been concluded, Quan said. For 5 days. The silence that followed was the kind that has weight. Okay, Destiny said finally. She picked up her tray. Okay. She walked back to the floor, and she was warm and efficient and memorized 3 new orders without writing them down and made the table by the window laugh about something and brought the wrong thing to table 7 and apologized and fixed it and did all the things she always did and did them well, and underneath all of it, running quiet and persistent like water underground, was the thing Quan had said. He cares about things here. I forgot he could do that. The Marcus situation happened on a Friday, which was already a complicated day emotionally, and it happened the way unwelcome things tend to happen, which is at the worst possible moment and in full view of everyone. Marcus Williams was 26, broadly handsome, and possessed of the specific charisma of a person who is very good at the first impression and less consistent with everything that follows. He and Destiny had a history that she described to Chloe as a situation, and that Chloe described to anyone who would listen as a recurring bad decision with good hair. He came into the diner at 11:15 on a Friday saying he was in the area, which was not true because he lived 40 minutes away and had no reason to be in this area. And Destiny knew it wasn't true, and he knew she knew, and they both let it go because that was how they had always operated. In the comfortable dishonesty of people who know each other's patterns too well. He leaned on the counter. He made her laugh. The real laugh, the one that arrived before she did, the one that Chloe said could be heard from the parking lot on a good day. He touched her arm. Just briefly, just friendly, the easy physical language of two people with history. Lee Jun's coffee cup had been empty for 6 minutes. He had not asked for a refill. He had not moved. He was sitting in his window booth with both hands flat on the table and the stillness of a weather system deciding what kind of storm to become, and Quan, who had looked up from his phone at exactly the wrong moment, saw his boss's face and immediately reached for the last muffin on the plate with the energy of a man preparing for impact. Lee Jun stood up. "Don't," Quan said, without looking up, because he didn't need to look up. "I'm getting a refill," Lee Jun said. "You don't take refills," Quan said. "You told me last Tuesday that American coffee is dishwater with confidence." "I've changed," Lee Jun said. "In 4 days," Quan said. "People grow," Lee Jun said, and walked to the counter with the measured, unhurried movement of a man who is being extremely casual in the specific way that means he is not casual at all, and came to stand beside Marcus at the counter with the energy of a weather front arriving over flat ground. Marcus, who had excellent instincts in the way that people who have made many questionable decisions develop excellent instincts as a survival mechanism, felt the shift in atmosphere immediately and looked to his left and found Lee Jun standing there with an expression that was technically neutral and emotionally the opposite of neutral. Destiny looked up from the counter. She saw Lee Jun. She saw Marcus. She saw Quan in the corner booth eating a muffin with the focused concentration of a man who has decided he is not involved in whatever is about to happen. "Lee Jun," she said, with the specific, careful tone of someone defusing something. "This is Marcus." Lee Jun looked at Marcus for exactly 1 second. The second lasted a long time. It was the kind of second that contains an entire assessment, a conclusion, and a filing system. "Okay," Lee Jun said. "Not hello. Not nice to meet you. Okay." Like Marcus was a piece of information he had received, processed, and categorized as irrelevant. Marcus, who understood exactly what okay meant in that context, said, "I should get going," to Destiny, with the smile of a man retreating strategically, and touched her arm again. Briefer this time, more goodbye than hello, and left with the energy of someone who has correctly identified an exit and used it efficiently. The door closed. Destiny turned to Lee Jun. "Refill," he said, sliding his cup across the counter, perfectly composed. "What," Destiny said, "was that?" "I needed coffee," Lee Jun said. "You don't even like the coffee here." "I like it now." "Lee Jun." She put both hands on the counter. "You walked over here and stood next to him like a customer," Lee Jun said, "getting a refill. You said one word to him." "I said okay." That okay had a whole sentence behind it. "I don't know what you mean," Lee Jun said, with the serenity of a man who knows exactly what she means. Destiny stared at him for a long moment. He held her gaze with complete equanimity. The espresso machine behind her made its periodic sound of protest. "He wasn't good for you," Lee Jun said. The shift was immediate. The argument energy drained out of the air, and something quieter and more serious moved in to replace it. "You don't know anything about that," Destiny said. Quiet now. No longer performing exasperation. Just real. "He was 12 minutes late," Lee Jun said. "I watched you check your phone 3 times before he came in. When he apologized, you said it was fine before he finished the sentence. You do that. You forgive too fast when you're used to someone disappointing you. You forgive fast because you've already adjusted your expectations before they walk through the door, and adjusting your expectations feels more manageable than the conversation you'd have to have if you didn't." The diner sounds continued around them. Someone ordered eggs at table 4. A chair scraped. The kitchen bell rang. Destiny said nothing for a long time. "That's not your business," she said finally. Very quietly. "No," Lee Jun said. "It isn't." He took his refilled coffee and walked back to his table and sat down and looked out the window, and Destiny stood behind the counter for a moment that lasted longer than a moment, holding the coffee pot, feeling the specific discomfort of being seen accurately by someone she hadn't given permission to look. Chloe materialized at her elbow from the kitchen. I heard all of that, Chloe said. I know, Destiny said. Every word, Chloe said. Chloe, he's right though, Chloe said, and disappeared back into the kitchen before Destiny could respond, which was probably wise. Destiny went back to work. She was warm and efficient, and she memorized her orders, and she smiled at her tables, and she did her job well. And the thing Lee Jun had said followed her around the rest of the shift like a song she hadn't chosen to learn, but now couldn't stop hearing. He was right about the 12 minutes. He was right about the phone. He was right about the adjusting, the preemptive forgiveness, the managed expectation. He had named a thing she had been doing for so long it had stopped feeling like a choice and started feeling like personality. And he had named it in 30 seconds from a window booth where he had been watching her check her phone. She thought about that for a long time. She did not tell him she thought about it. The cooking argument happened 2 days later, and it was, relative to the emotional weather of the preceding week, almost a relief in its simplicity, which is to say it was a clean fight with clear positions, and nobody said anything true enough to follow the other person home. Destiny was on her break, sitting in the corner of the kitchen with her notebook open to a recipe she'd been developing for 8 months, adjusting a spice balance she couldn't quite get right. The notebook was worn at the spine, and the pages had different colors of ink depending on when she'd written in them. Black pen from the early days, blue from the middle period, pencil toward the back, where things were still tentative. She was deep enough in the work that she didn't notice Lee Jun had come to the kitchen door until he spoke. The spice balance on that dish would be wrong, he said. She looked up slowly. The slowness was a warning and also a request for him to reconsider, which he did not take. I'm sorry, she said. Gochujang and paprika at those quantities, he said, nodding at the notebook with the confidence of a man whose opinion on this is not, in his view, optional. The smokiness would compete. The gochujang would lose, and you'd taste the paprika underneath everything like a second conversation happening at the wrong volume. Destiny closed the notebook. How would you know? I own 47 restaurants, Lee Jun said. The silence that followed was the particular silence of new information arriving. You own, Destiny started. 47, Lee Jun confirmed. 31 bubble tea shops, 9 Korean barbecue, for fusion. That's not the point. 3 breakfast concepts, he continued, which is relevant to this conversation. The point, Destiny said, standing up, is that you cannot walk up to someone's personal notebook, their private notebook, and start telling them their recipe is wrong like you're a... I own 3 breakfast concept restaurants, Lee Jun said again, patiently. I heard you the first time. She pointed at him. You can't just, this is mine. This is my thing. You don't get to walk up to my thing and critique it like you're doing me a favor. Something shifted in his face. Small. Real. You're right, he said. I apologize. She blinked. In 3 weeks, she had not heard him apologize for anything. She had not been sure the word existed in whatever internal language he operated in. The gochujang is still wrong, though, he said. I will pour this coffee on you, she said. That would be assault, he said. It would be worth it, she said, and he did something with his mouth that was almost a smile, and she pointed at the door and he went, and she stood in the kitchen alone with her notebook and her recipe and the specific, infuriating, undeniable awareness that he was right about the gochujang. She adjusted it that night. At her kitchen table, alone, after her shift, she adjusted the balance exactly the way his critique had implied she should, and then she made a small test batch and tasted it. And it was perfect, and she sat with the perfectness of it for a long moment. And then she said out loud to nobody, I hate that, and ate the rest of it standing over the stove. She never told him. He found out anyway, through some intelligence network of observation and inference that she was beginning to understand was simply how he moved through the world, noticing everything and cataloging it without announcing that he was doing so. And the following Friday, he sat in his booth and radiated the quiet satisfaction of a man who has been right about something that mattered. And Destiny refilled his coffee and refused to acknowledge it. And he accepted the refusal with the patience of someone who is content to simply know. The broken umbrella happened on a Wednesday night 3 weeks and 4 days into what was supposed to be a 2-week trip. And it was the night that everything between them shifted from the territory of almost into something that had no comfortable name, but was real in the way that very few things are real, which is to say it cost something to acknowledge it, and they acknowledged it anyway. Destiny's car died at 8:47 p.m. in the parking lot behind the diner. Not dramatically. No noise, no smoke, no final statement. It simply stopped being a functional vehicle between one moment and the next, the way things that have been struggling quietly for a long time eventually stop pretending. She sat in the driver's seat for 30 seconds, tried the ignition twice more with the focused energy of someone who understands this won't work but needs to try anyway, and then got out and stood in the parking lot doing math in her head. The math was not good. The tow would cost between $80 and $120, depending on who answered. The repair, she didn't know yet, but she knew her car, and she knew the particular sound it had been making for 3 weeks, and she knew that sound was expensive. She had $412 in her checking account, and rent was in 9 days, and the math kept coming out wrong no matter how she arranged the numbers. It had started raining sometime in the last 20 minutes. Not heavily. The specific light rain that is somehow more demoralizing than heavy rain because it isn't dramatic enough to justify your misery, but it is consistent enough to make everything slightly worse in every direction. She opened her umbrella. Half of it responded. The other half did something structurally complicated in the wind that suggested it had made a decision about its future that didn't involve being an umbrella anymore. She was standing in the parking lot with her half-open umbrella doing bad math in her head when the car pulled up. She didn't need to look to know whose it was. She had spent 3.5 weeks learning the sound of that particular engine, the pace of those particular footsteps, the specific quality of silence that preceded Lee Jun saying something she wasn't prepared for. "No," she said, before he'd spoken. "Get in," he said. "I called a cab. It's raining. I have an umbrella," she said. "It's broken," he said. She looked down at the umbrella. The architectural experiment that had been the right half was now doing something that defied description. She looked back up. "I'm fine," she said. "You're soaking wet," Lee Jun said. "And you're doing the math thing with your jaw, and the numbers aren't working out, and you're going to stand here in the rain being fine until a cab comes in 40 minutes that you're going to calculate the cost of the whole way home." Destiny stared at him. "I do not do a math thing with my jaw," she said. "Your jaw tightens," he said. "On the left side. You've been doing it since you got out of the car." She became immediately and furiously aware of her jaw. "I'm not getting in the car with you," she said. "Why?" he said. Not a challenge. A genuine question, asked quietly in the rain with his hands in his coat pockets and his eyes on her face with the particular attention she had spent 3 weeks trying not to notice. "Because you'll think it means something," she said. The rain continued. Somewhere down the block a car passed. The broken umbrella made a small sound of continued structural failure. Lee Jun looked at her for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was quiet and without any of the armor that usually lived in it. "Does it have to mean nothing?" he said. Destiny stood in the parking lot with the broken umbrella and the bad math and 6 words that had walked straight through every practical objection she'd carefully arranged and landed somewhere she hadn't given them permission to go. Her chest did something complicated. Her jaw did the math thing, and this time the math was not about money. She got in the car. Kwon, in the driver's seat, looked straight ahead with the expression of a man exercising enormous professional discretion. Neither Destiny nor Lee Jun spoke for 4 minutes. The rain moved across the windows. The city passed outside in its nighttime colors, orange and white and the occasional red of traffic signals, and the silence between them was not uncomfortable but full. The way silences are full when 2 people are both sitting with something they haven't named yet, and they both know they haven't named it, and they're both, for the moment, content to let it be unnamed. "You can't tell Chloe about the umbrella," Destiny said finally. "Okay," Lee Jun said. "She'll make it a whole thing." "Okay," Lee Jun said. A beat. The rain. A traffic light changing. "Thank you," Destiny said. Quietly. Not her professional warmth. Not the warmth she gave everyone. Something underneath that, smaller and more specific and entirely her own. Lee Jun nodded, looked forward, and did absolutely nothing to conceal the fact that he was trying very hard not to smile and not entirely succeeding. The smile was the slow one, the one that took a moment to load, and it arrived in the dark of the car while he was looking out the window, and Destiny saw it in his reflection in the glass and looked away before he could catch her looking. Kwon drove. His jaw was very tight. Not because of math. Because of the specific effort required to maintain professional composure when you are witnessing something you have been waiting to witness for 3.5 weeks and you are not, under any circumstances, going to ruin it by reacting. He dropped Destiny at her building. She got out, thanked Kwon, who said you're welcome with the voice of a man holding a great deal together. She said goodnight to Lee Jun through the window, and he said goodnight back, and she walked into her building, and the door closed. Kwon pulled away from the curb. From the back seat. She saw the smile. I know, Quan said. In the window. I know, Quan said. Is that? Yes? Quan said, before he could finish the question. That's a good thing. Li Jun said nothing for a while. Then, Quan. Yes. Push the soul check-in to Friday. Quan pushed the soul check-in to Friday. Then to the following Monday. Then to Wednesday. His second-in-command in Seoul called twice and left messages with the specific diplomatic urgency of someone who is trying not to say what they actually mean, which was, the territory situation is deteriorating, and we need you here, and every day you are not here is a day we are losing ground. Quan relayed these messages. Li Jun listened to them. He went to the diner the next morning. Then Chloe Googled Li Jun. This was inevitable, and everyone who knew Chloe understood it was inevitable, including Destiny, which was why she had been specifically not Googling him herself, because once Chloe did it, the information would arrive whether she wanted it to or not, and she could maintain her careful not knowing until then. The texts arrived across 40 minutes on a Thursday morning while Destiny was on the floor. 7:42 a.m., Destiny. 7:51 a.m., Destiny. 8:03 a.m. Okay, so I Googled your little boyfriend. 8:04 a.m. Destiny, he has a Wikipedia page. 8:09 a.m. The Wikipedia page has citations. 8:17 a.m. There is a section called Known Incidents. 8:18 a.m. Destiny, there are 7 subsections. 8:24 a.m. Subsection 4 is called the Chandelier Incident, and it just says details omitted at subject's request. Destiny, what does that mean? 8:31 a.m. He owns bubble tea shops. Destiny, bubble tea shops. There are 31 of them. They have good reviews. 8:39 a.m. I need you to call me when you get off. I have feelings about this. Many feelings. They are complicated. Destiny read all of these in the walk-in refrigerator during her 10 o'clock break, standing among the produce and the cold cuts in her apron with her phone in both hands. She stood in the cold for a long time. She read the messages twice. Then she stood with what she'd read for a while longer, in the specific way you stand with information that recontextualizes a lot of smaller information you'd been filing incorrectly. 7 subsections. Known incidents. The chandelier. 10 attempts. A Wikipedia page with citations. And every morning for 3.5 weeks he had come to the same booth and ordered coffee he didn't like and argued about coleslaw and written footnoted documents about her diner's lunch margins and stood in the rain and said, does it have to mean nothing, in a voice that had no armor in it at all. She put her phone in her apron pocket, walked back out onto the floor. Table 3 needed refills. Table 7 was ready to order. The espresso machine was making its noise again. Li Jun was at his window booth. He looked up when she came through the kitchen door. He didn't say anything. He just looked at her in the way he had started looking at her when he thought she wasn't paying attention, which was to say completely, with the full attention of someone who is not performing interest but simply, helplessly, interested. She brought him a coffee he hadn't asked for yet. He looked at the cup, looked at her. I know about the chandelier, she said. Something moved across his face. Complex. Unguarded. Okay, he said quietly. Okay, she said, and went back to work, and that was all, and it was somehow everything. The final Tuesday arrived the way final things tend to arrive, which is all at once and without adequate warning, despite the fact that everything leading up to it had been a warning if you were paying attention, and both of them had been paying attention, and neither of them had been ready anyway. 3 things happened simultaneously before 8 in the morning. The Seoul operation sent its ultimatum through Kwon, who received it at 6:45 a.m. and sat with it in his car outside the diner for 15 minutes before going in, which was how Destiny knew something was wrong before he said a word, because Kwon was always exactly on time and 15 minutes late was its own kind of message. The ultimatum was clear. Come back now or lose the Northern Territory. 9 years of infrastructure. Supply routes that had taken half a decade to establish. Irreplaceable in any timeline that didn't involve starting over from nothing. The scholarship letter had been sitting in Destiny's bag for 4 days unopened because opening it would require making it real, and making it real would require deciding something she hadn't been ready to decide. She opened it that morning at 6 a.m. at her kitchen table with both hands around a coffee cup she wasn't drinking from, in the specific stillness of someone who has been avoiding a moment and has decided, finally, to stop avoiding it. Full scholarship. Readmission approved. Someone had anonymously covered her remaining balance, the letter said, which had made her sit very still for a long time, because the balance was specific and not small, and the number of people who knew what it was exactly was very limited. Her name, the financial aid office. And, she now understood, one other person who had stayed up making PDFs at 2 in the morning and thought that solving things quietly was the same as not interfering. And the espresso machine, which had been threatening its finale for 6 months with increasing theatrical commitment, chose that morning to complete its final act with a sound that the cook later described as a dying whale attempting opera, followed by a release of steam that reorganized the entire counter area and took the morning rush with it into chaos. Destiny was standing in the wreckage of steamed milk and broken equipment and 4 days of unopened letter when Lee Jun walked in at his usual time, looking jet-lagged in a way she hadn't seen before, slightly rumpled, with 4 folded pages in his jacket pocket that she clocked immediately because she had been clocking everything about him for weeks without meaning to. He looked at the machine, looked at her, looked at the letter in her hand which she had forgotten she was holding. "Don't," she said. "I didn't say anything," he said. "You were about to do the face." "I don't have a face." "He paid for your school, Destiny," Chloe said, from the kitchen window, with the energy of someone who has been holding information for too long and has made a decision about it. The silence that followed was geological. Destiny turned very slowly toward the kitchen window. Chloe, caught in the full weight of Destiny's gaze, went through several expressions rapidly, landing finally on the expression of someone who stands by their choices but is aware of their consequences. "I thought you knew," Chloe said. "You should know. I stand by it." Destiny turned back to Lee Jun. Lee Jun had the expression of a man who had survived 10 assassination attempts and was genuinely uncertain whether he would survive this one. His hands were still. His face was composed in the way that faces are composed when composure is taking effort. "You paid for my school," Destiny said. "It was an investment," Lee Jun said. "In what?" "Culinary infrastructure," he said, which was the moment his composure and the truth parted ways, and he seemed to know it, because something shifted in his face immediately after. "Lee Jun," Destiny said, with a quietness that was more serious than volume would have been. "You mentioned it once," he said. 4 weeks ago. A Tuesday. You were on your break, and you were looking at that notebook, and I asked what you were working on, and you said a thing I was doing, and then you changed the subject. But before you changed the subject, you said the funding gap was specific, and you said it the way people say things they've stopped expecting to change." He paused. "It was solvable. So I solved it. Without asking me," Destiny said. "You would have said no," he said. "Obviously, I would have said no. Which is why I didn't ask. That is," she stopped, pressed her hands flat against the counter. "You cannot make decisions about my life, Lee Jun. That is not something you get to do. I have been taking care of myself for a long time, and I don't need." "You're wrong about the gochujang," he said. "You're wrong about the tip. You're wrong about not deserving things." He held her gaze with everything he had. "And you were wrong about this. You have been so good at not needing anything for so long that you forgot that needing things isn't a weakness. You forgot that you're allowed." His voice was quiet and entirely without performance. "I didn't pay for your school because I think you can't manage. I paid for it because you can, and you should, and the only thing standing between you and it was a number, and I had the number, and He stopped. Something moved through his face that was rare and unguarded and real. "I wanted to. That's all. I just wanted to." Chloe, in the kitchen window, had both hands over her mouth. The cook was pretending to look at something on the other side of the kitchen. Nobody was fooling anyone. Destiny looked at Lee Jun for a long time. Her jaw did the math. The math this time was not about money or logistics or the cost of car repairs. It was the calculation of a person who has been wrong about what they deserve for long enough that being right about it feels unfamiliar and slightly frightening. "Go back to Seoul," she said finally. "Quiet. Steady." Lee Jun said nothing. "Fix your territory. Do what you have to do." She held his gaze. "And then come back. If you want. You can come back after." The pause was long and full, and neither of them looked away. "Okay," he said. He went back to Seoul. He handled the territory negotiation in 4 days, which was projected to take 3 weeks, because he was terrifyingly efficient when he had somewhere to be afterward. And then he planned the gesture, which was the espresso machine, commercial grade, the best available, delivered and installed before Friday's opening, and him there when she arrived. And a speech he had been writing for 3 days that was 4 pages long with 3 cited sources, which Kwon read at 2 in the morning and cried into his ramen about without telling anyone. What happened instead was the delivery arrived 4 hours early. The machine was enormous. It took up a third of the counter, The delivery team knocked over the condiment station during installation. There was sweetener everywhere, and Lee Jun arrived to find his grand gesture, looking like a kitchen appliance showroom, had experienced a significant event. He was standing in the middle of it, jet-lagged and slightly rumpled, and holding 4 folded pages, when Destiny walked in. She looked at the machine, looked at the condiment station, looked at Lee Jun. "What happened?" she said. "Logistical complications," he said. The delivery team confirmed the machine was fully operational and left with the energy of people who understood they were not the main characters of this scene. Chloe was behind the counter with a muffin in what she believed was a hiding position. Nobody mentioned it. Lee Jun unfolded his 4 pages with the seriousness of a man who has prepared remarks and intends to deliver them. "You wrote a speech," Destiny said, staring at the pages. "I prepared remarks," Lee Jun said. "How many pages?" 4. Lee Jun. "There are also citations." "How many citations?" 3. "If you would just." "Sir," said one of the delivery guys, who had not actually left yet. "Should we go?" "Yes," said everyone. When they were alone, with Chloe behind the counter, not hiding effectively, and the magnificent espresso machine humming its first notes of operational life, Lee Jun looked at his 4 pages. Looked at Destiny, who was looking at him with the expression he had never been able to fully catalog. Somewhere between exasperated and something much softer and much more dangerous and entirely real. He refolded the pages. "You terrify me," he said. Destiny went still. "I have not been terrified of anything since I was 19 years old, he said. "And then you said, 'Hey boo, what can I get you?' And I couldn't remember my own name. I have survived a car bomb. I did not survive that." He held her gaze with everything that was true in him. "You remembered I don't take sugar. On the second visit. Without being told. And I thought about it every day after because nobody had ever. Nobody just." He stopped. Started again. "I have been in rooms with powerful people my entire adult life, and not one of them ever just asked what I wanted and waited for the answer like it mattered. Like I was a person and not a position." The diner was very quiet. "That's what was in the speech," Destiny said softly. "The speech was more structured," he said. "It had an introduction." "Come here," she said. He came here. He stood in front of her and looked down at her, and she looked up at him with the face of a woman who has been wrong about what she deserves for a long time and is choosing, deliberately, and with full knowledge of what it costs, to be right about it. "The Gojujang was right," she said. "It wasn't," he said. "It was," she said, and kissed him, partly because she wanted to and partly to win the argument by default, and both things were true, and she was completely fine with that. Chloe stood up from behind the counter and began slow clapping. Nobody had asked her to. She did it with her whole heart. 6 months later, Destiny Smith opened a small restaurant. Neighborhood spot. The kind where regulars had their table, and the food tasted like somebody's grandmother made it, and the light in the evening came through the windows at exactly the right angle. On the menu, between the sides, was a gochujang glazed short rib with a small note beneath it that said developed with reluctant input. Lee Jun read it from his table by the window, the standing reservation. The one Destiny rolled her eyes at every time the host marked it in the book, which Lee Jun found privately delightful every single time. He read the menu note and looked across the room at her and smiled. The full one. The slow one. The kind that took a moment to load and arrived completely when it did. Destiny pretended not to see it. She had absolutely seen it. The 4-page speech, citations and all, lived in Lee Jun's jacket pocket. Destiny found it once, did the math thing with her jaw, and put it back without reading it. He noticed. Said nothing. Some things you keep. Here is what this story is really about, underneath all of it. It is about the cost of surviving. Both of them had survived their histories. Lee Jun had built himself into something untouchable, and Destiny had built herself into someone who needed nothing. And both of those constructions had worked, and both of them had cost something quiet and significant that neither of them had named until a diner in Atlanta made the naming unavoidable. The lesson is not that love fixes people. They were not broken. They were defended, which is different, and what shifted between them was not repair but permission. Permission to put the armor down in front of someone who was not going to use the soft place against you. Destiny learned that needing things is not weakness, and that a dream deferred is not a dream destroyed, only a dream waiting for the moment you decide you're allowed to have it again. Lee Jun learned that strength without softness is a very elaborate way of being alone, and that the most radical thing another person can do for you is treat you like a regular person and mean it. And Quan learned that grilled cheese is genuinely excellent, and that whatever Chloe's last name was, he intended to find out. Thank you for staying until the last word. If this story found something in you, if the umbrella got you, or the coleslaw, or the 4-page speech with citations, or just the image of the most dangerous man in Asia framing a loyalty punch card, then it did exactly what it was supposed to do. These are the stories worth telling. The ones where nobody is rescued and nobody is fixed and two people simply, at great personal cost and occasional comedy, decide to be known. Come back for the next one, and maybe tip your waitress.